What do you think of when you hear the word borders? Maybe you picture strolling through an old-school bookstore, taking your time to browse the shelves and pick out your next great read. Or perhaps you recall the chain S now infamous 2006 commercial featuring a young girl who prefers her dog to her father. Well, whatever your first association may be, it's likely that the concept of borders evokes feelings of familiarity and comfort. That is, unless you were one of the 134 million people worldwide who identify as nomadic. For them, borders represent something much less pleasant: obstacles to movement, separation from loved ones, and a constant battle for survival. But this wasn't always the case. Long before borders divided our world into neat and tidy countries, the planet was home to some of the most extensive and well-developed road networks in history. With these routes came the freedom to travel and trade across vast distances, which allowed for cultural exchange and economic growth. This golden age of borderless exploration eventually came to an end, however, replaced by the drawn lines and guarded barriers that we recognize today. So, what does it mean to live in a borderless world? And how did our planet go from being a global village to a fragmented one? Let's start with the basics. The world's nomads are an incredibly diverse group of people whose lifestyles vary greatly depending on where they relocated and how they make a living. Some, like the Bedouin in North Africa and the Middle East, have maintained a nomadic lifestyle for centuries, traveling with their herds of animals in search of fresh grazing land. Others, like the Muria of India, have been forced to remain on the move due to persecution or environmental degradation. And still others, like many indigenous tribes in the Amazon rainforest, were once sedentary but have adopted a nomadic lifestyle in order to protect their ancestral lands from encroaching development. For all these groups and many more besides, borders present significant challenges. They disrupt traditional migration patterns and block access to culturally significant sites. They can also lead to violence and dispossession, as well as the breakdown of traditional economies that rely on cross-border trade or the use of shared resources. But despite these hardships, the world's nomads have found ways to adapt and resist. Using their intimate knowledge of the land, many have developed sustainable ways of living that allow them to thrive in some of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. Unfortunately, their success has not always translated to broader acceptance. In fact, throughout history, nomadic cultures have often been marginalized and stereotyped by those who consider them primitive, uncivilized, or dangerous. But the truth is that nomadism is simply a different way of relating to the world. It's a way of life that emphasizes adaptability, resilience, and a deep connection to the natural world. Of course, this doesn't mean that life as a nomad is idyllic. It's often challenging, even brutal, and requires incredible strength and determination. But for those who choose this lifestyle, it's a small price to pay for the freedom to roam. So how do we get from a world without borders to one where movement is so heavily restricted? The answer is complex, and there is no single event that can be blamed. Rather, it's the result of centuries of economic, political, and technological changes. The growth of states, the rise of nationalism, and the Industrial Revolution all played a role in fragmenting our world and creating the borders that define our maps today. But while these forces have had a profound impact on the way we live, they don't tell the whole story. Borders are not just lines on a map. They're symbols of power and control. They represent the dominance of certain groups over others and the prioritization of economic growth over human rights. But despite the challenges they face, the world's nomads continue to resist. They're fighting for their right to roam, for their cultures, and for their very survival. And in doing so, they're reminding us that there is another way to live, a way that is more sustainable, more equitable, and more in tune with the natural world. Perhaps it's time we all embrace this challenge and reimagine our world without borders. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and leave a like. And if you know someone who might be interested, please share this with them too. Your support helps us to create more content like this and keep our videos free for everyone forever.